Right? This will translate English to French. Pick up the stuff, the blue stuff there. No?
Tu peux le faire en français peut-être pour ceux qui ne comprennent pas l'anglais justement. Peut-être qu'ils ne parlent pas.
J'ai l'impression que personne ne parle français. Si? Donc pour ceux qui veulent la traduction automatique, c'est là-bas que ça se passe, il y a des petites boîtes bleues. Non?
Parfait, génial.
Vous êtes tous prêts? Okay. So welcome to this roundtable or panel on what can AI bring to SMEs. We've gathered here a big panel, obviously way too big for only 1 hour. So we're not going, we've prepared a very detailed list of questions, and probably we will not follow any of that. The good thing would be if we could get interaction from you guys here and questions. So basically, I'm not going to go through detailed introduction to everybody. I'm just going to point. So I'm pointing to Andreas Liebl from Munich in Germany, obviously. Then Shakil Ahmed from Portugal. Then Shafika Chetawi from Suez in Paris. Then Didier Gauthier from Business and Decision in Paris. And then Roger Agustin from Prenomics in Barcelona. And I'm Françoise Soulié from Upfront AI, obviously from Paris, as you can tell from my nice English accent. The topic here is going to be about what are the challenges to start with. What are the challenges that the SMEs face when they want to adopt AI? To start with that, we're going to talk first about digital maturity, and I think ladies first. Shafika.
So yeah, the question is about why SME doesn't go through AI and data and digital. One of the explanations when we made this roundtable before, we said it's about maturity. If you have an SME without having, an historical data, platforms, knowledge about how the data can help them, they will not think about AI. So it's first of all about the maturity they have, the infrastructure they have within their company, and perhaps also they think it's not for them, it's for Amazon, it's for big companies, but it's not available for all. So we do think that the first level is the maturity and knowing how we can do things with AI. It's why for them, which purpose for them, what can we do, what cannot do.
Yeah, and probably Roger is a little bit about infrastructure, right?
Yeah, well, one thing that we see that's really important is that once you overcome the part of becoming digital, you really need to put this data into a good structure in order to be able to exploit it and to get insights from this data and to actually build analysis and algorithms from this data that can be executed systematically and used in the day-to-day operations of the business. For that reason, it's important to have this kind of analytics databases and systems that allow these algorithms to be used in the day-to-day operations of the business.
And next, obviously, what SMEs need and have to have and don't have is talent.
Yes, Françoise, thank you very much. Knowledge and skills are key in artificial intelligence. And one of the biggest challenges that SMEs are facing may be the fact that they don't have data scientists, data engineers, machine learning engineers in their staff. And consequently, it's very difficult for them to imagine what they can do, and at this basic principle, what they can do with AI. So, you know that in the press, in the TV, we see a lot of advertising about AI, we see a lot of films, and maybe a lot of SMEs, managers and directors and officers are thinking about AI like this, what they see in the TV and what they see in the press. And sometimes, this does not give a clue on what AI can do for them. And that's a pity because AI, of course, has a great potential for all companies, including, of course, SMEs, and we have some experience about that. But because they don't know what AI can do, they don't ask for projects to be done. They think maybe it's a budget, maybe it's a problem. And they don't have the team inside their staff to be able to tell them we can do that or we cannot do that. And more precisely, they don't have the skills needed to be able to evaluate by themselves the use cases that they can do. And consequently, because they are not able to imagine or to evaluate the use case they can do, they do nothing. That's a real challenge. And I would like to just add that about competencies, also a difficulty today, and not only for SMEs, is that there is not really a norm in terms of what competency you need really to do AI. What is a data engineer? What is a ML engineer? What is a data scientist? And each company have their own standards, and unfortunately, each school also have their own standards. Some are doing some R, some are doing some Python, some are doing some Spark, some are doing some other technology, and there are a lot of technology available, so it's very difficult to know what kind of skills you need, and in particular when you are a small company.
So basically, with all these questions, typically when you want to get an answer to that for an SME, the best way is to turn to a friend. My friend Andreas will take that one.
Yes, so when we talk to companies typically, then one of the main questions is what do you do yourself, and in what cases you simply work with others, with partners, and in many cases this is startups. And now if you look at AI, startups that have and use AI technology typically get larger investments, more money from VCs. So every startup today goes out and says we do something with AI, which is actually a challenge for these companies because they have no idea who is actually a good startup and a bad startup. And many companies that started to work on AI solutions come to us disillusionized, saying, we tried it, there's no effect, it seems not to work, and that's maybe not the case because the use case is not right or the technology is not right, but the partner was not the right one. And therefore, it actually is really important that there are neutral places, that there are platforms where organizations can find the right partners. That's what we are doing in Germany with the German AI startup landscape. That's what we also do on a European level with Hub France on their own startup landscape in Sweden and Norway and other countries to find the right partners that are kind of like assessed by a trust partner that help them to really work with these companies on the right use cases and to get really results.
Yeah, so last topic, which is not least, the budget.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Françoise, for the opportunity. So, as Françoise was saying, I work for a Portuguese company, and the interesting thing about Portugal is that 82% of the employment is with SMEs. So in Portugal, if you can't work with SMEs, you don't have business. And we've had some experience, and essentially with SMEs, there are three common denominators that come out when we talk about AI. Okay? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. FUD. You've heard of this before, right? Why? Because even before we can talk about AI, you have to talk about data or digitization. So to work with SMEs, what's extremely important is to work with them. Take them to the different stages of evolution, and not revolution, even it's the common theme in France, evolution, to take them through the journey to a point where we have been able to get them over the fear, and then we have to make sure we provide them with value that gets them over the uncertainty. And the last leg, before they take it and embrace it, the doubt that this will actually give them a long-term value for SMEs. So what I want to say here is, yes, AI is very important, data is very important, but above all with SMEs, it's to actually work with them side by side and help them in their transformation journey from where they sit to where we need to get them so they can embrace and use AI to its full extent.
You didn't tell me about the little problem of finding a budget.
Hello? Yeah. And so that brings to the second stage, where are we going to fund it and bring the money? Thank you, Françoise. So I think here, somebody's passing. Who? Okay. Yeah, so I think François is very right. And in that transformation, we ensure that we provide them with the financial capability. And I think here, the public authorities have a very important stake. We see this. We see this in many European countries where the local government and the national government have budgets. Can you hear me? Okay. Budgets and financial tools to kickstart the transformation. Ed, thank you. What's important is that with that money, you also have to make sure you take them through the transformation. So money is very good. We need the budget, but we also need to accompany them in their transformation.
Okay, guys, so you've seen a lot of challenges, not to mention not having the sound, right? Which is quite a problem. So now we're going to see how we can overcome these challenges, because actually there are solutions out there. So probably the first thing that an SME is going to need is actually to find the right partner. And I would like, ladies first, as usual, Shafika, to tell us how can we find a good partnership?
Yes, I think it was mentioned before, there are a lot of people on the market and we need to select which one is the good, and it's not easy, even for big companies, even for everyone. So I think the first thing is to find the use case. What do we want to solve with AI and data? Find the good use case, and look after Rex, return and experience of other companies, our people like them, and find the right company. And coming back to your point, Didier, about people, I think they don't need to internalize. They can do with partners like Business and Decision, for example. You are doing a lot of stuff on data. But finding the good partner to show to their SME, their teams, that data is worth it, that AI is worth it. Show the example, find examples with other companies to partner with the right one. Show before transforming their data internally, internalize people, put in their technology in place. But I think before investing a lot, they need to showcase and partner with the best one in the market.
Yeah, right. Basically, what you want in your partner is that your partner understand your business. If you meet a partner who start telling you about everything AI, then you don't get the right partner. What you want is that this partner talks to you about your needs, what you do, and how you could do it better. And I think, Roger, maybe you can tell us about this kind of issues.
If the noise allows. Well, yeah. Something that's really important in that sense. It's yeah. Can you hear me? Something that's very important in that sense. It's starting from somewhere that is not the roof of the house. You always want to start from the basis, and if you find a partner that tells you that like you do not still can visualize the data of your business in an agile manner, and he's starting talking to you about AI in all your processes, probably this is the recipe for failure. It's always good to start from the beginning, to bring your data. Maybe the first project of data should be a visualization project, bringing insights to the right actors in the first place. And when you overcome this initial stage, then you can bring the initial algorithms to bring small forecasts, for instance, in order to assist decision-making to the business people. And then when you overcome this stage, you can move forward and try to think on implementing an AI algorithm that nurtures your business. And this is very, very important, to try to be realistic, be feasible, and try to go step by step. Always with this perspective of taking into account the business user, bring them together in the journey, develop everything with the partner, like do not let him develop by himself and come to you at the very end, but try to be part of the solution and try to be realistic in this first project.
I think one of the key questions here is for an SME to quickly get success. If you fail in your first project, this is over for AI, too bad. So I would like to have Andreas on that. How do you get quick success and return on investment?
Yeah, I think the return on investment is one of the hard things. So what we typically do is to really look at the use case portfolio for a company. And in many, many cases, there is a kind of common set of use cases, especially if you look at the process side, if you not look at the product of a company. On the processes, there are many established solutions that you can apply for your business, and there is some return. That is for quality control, there is predictive maintenance in marketing and sales, also in parts in controlling and finance. So in many of these specific process parts of an organization or functional units of an organization, there are established cases and solution providers that allow you to get some return. Sadly, and I need to say that, also if some people might not want to hear that, for many of these AI cases, the return really comes with the growth of the application of the solution and the scaling of that solution. And scaling AI solutions is difficult because there are so many things for learning systems that you have to take care of. So what you see is many good applications that give you some return, but for the big returns, you actually have to invest in the maturity of your company, really being able to apply AI in your organization.
Yeah, so maybe the question, Shakil, you can tell us about is how do you bring together all what is necessary for a company to build its path to AI? It's not in one go, but it's going to develop and safely and securely, please.
Yes, thank you, François. It's absolutely correct. So I totally agreed with what you said. I think for SMEs, it's not a big bang story. As I said, you have to start with a foundation, and you have to find what I call little baby step problems that can be solved. In fact, in our case, most of our customers, our initial discussion is not about AI, but the outcome that we can provide for them. And AI happens to be part of that journey. And in some cases, AI may not be part of the landscape at the initial step, but it kicks off the digitization process for many of these SMEs. And that means we have to work with them and with partners who understand their specific domain and identify critical areas where we can provide short-term outcome. Because what is really important for SMEs is they don't have the luxury of waiting 12 to 18 months for the initial outcome. So it has to be on the short term. And that may mean that the AI may not be part of the initial story, but it creates the path to bring in AI progressively as the company scales up in its digitization program.
and to end probably the use of use cases to help an SME to understand or get acculturated, if that word exists in English, acculturation en français. Didier, maybe you can tell us about that.
Yeah, thank you. In fact, as my colleagues was explaining, knowing what to do with AI to go to the right use case at the first time will prevent failure. Because if you choose the wrong use case, it may be too long or too costly or not doable or not suited to the business. And the consequences, as you said, Françoise, is that for an SME, if the first project is not the right one, then it is a stop. And then it's a problem. So choosing the right use case need, I think, both two things. The first thing is to acculturate the officers and the directors on what is really AI, what it can do, what it cannot do, and also what kind of use case you can do with it. For big group, generally what we do is we do workshops with big groups, with our clients, and we analyze the pains, and we analyze the benefits, the business benefits, and we rank the use cases that we can do. We use also some gamification processes, design thinking and things like that. And it takes some time, but generally we end off with a 10 or 15 use case, and then we have to prioritize the one you want to do. But this is what we do with big groups. With SMEs, it's more difficult to do that because you have to acculturate them on what is doable. So this is why what we have done at Business and Decision, we have pre-worked internally some use case by vertical for retail, for instance, for industry, for government, for banking, for insurance, and so on. And we end up with something like 300 use cases that are really standard use cases that we can show to the SMEs, that we can demonstrate, that we have already done, or where we have some examples of real benefits that has been obtained with this use case. And we found that this way of acculturation, showing by example, is the best way, we think, to start with SME.
So, absolutely right. So maybe to go on that topic, we are going to spend the next 10 minutes by everybody here presenting one concrete example of what can work. And possible one can fail, I don't know. Andreas, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I want to give one example of one program that we actually have from AI Singapore, which is a very successful program in Singapore, which we then transferred to Germany. And we heard a bit about AI journey and AI maturity. So it's a process, and what typically also state-funded programs do is to look at one status. So it's about a bit of upskilling. It's helping to create a prototype and a nice showcase, but it actually does not help an organization to really grow and apply AI in their organization. So what we now do is a 9-month program where we start with this strategy of the organization, what they should actually do with AI to create that type of use case portfolio, and to have a training program of the engineers, of the IT specialists, of people that would in principle be able to understand AI and that also interested personally in getting to know artificial intelligence. Also with the board members and mostly the family owners of these businesses. So you have that upskilling process and then you actually implement an AI solution. To the end of the program, they should be able to continue alone and really have the skills and a roadmap and a working use case in the organization to then continue. And this is actually really successful because you look at the different industries, at the different companies, and you start with the question of what can then they, in the future, also be a differentiating use case for themselves. Because what we wanted to start with is, if you look at the national AI strategies, it's typically a statement that we want to be leading in AI. So it's not that a company needs to do something that everyone else is also doing and that we just go with everyone else, but it's an aspiration of being leaders in AI. And that means to start thinking strategically what for every company that means, also to differentiate themselves from others. And it's maybe also quite a few cases that are non-standard. So that, from that strategy perspective, to really a comprehensive upskilling is the type of program. That's something we roll out now in Germany as well. I mean, we are the largest non-profit organization for AI in Germany. So that's state-funded, but it has this programmatic approach, and that is really, really successful when it's about upskilling SMEs in the country.
Thank you. Yeah, the guy in Singapore are really strong. Shakil, maybe your turn.
Yes, thank you. So from a Glartech's perspective, as we work essentially with SMEs, and I want to also put into perspective what SME means. You have very small SMEs with maybe 100, 150 people to SMEs that may have 3,000, 4,000, and the challenges are not quite the same. In our case in Portugal, most of the SMEs tend to be more towards the smaller size, okay? So here the key thing is actually work with them and address areas where they see a short-term benefit. And we see three areas, okay? Short-term benefits could be on the financial side, improving their profitability, which is a classic for any small company. Looking at operational efficiency, particularly subjects like safety, which has become a real hot issue with many of the industries today. And there's also an issue about the social side, which is how do you scale up these organizations quickly to ensure that they can grow, which is also a big challenge in the industry. So what we do is we try to address these critical points and come up with a packaged proposition so that they can actually fast track this into their processes quickly. Because one of the key challenges for many small and medium-sized industries is that they cannot accept or support any break in their processes, okay? So it has to be very seamless with their existing ways of working and ensure that there's a buy-in from the key stakeholders, which can be the owners, but also the operating staff. So from our area where we're seeing a lot of interest in growth is in the safety area. And we're seeing this a lot of growth because it's a problem that they have to deal with every day. And the impact of not dealing with it is immediate. So we have worked with different industries, particularly in the chemical industry, where we've discovered that by using AI and by using digitization, you can increase significantly the safety of the workers. And at least I can think of one industry in one particular company where we're working where it's in the chemical segment, the chemical industry, where the workers were going into a hazardous area, and for at least about half an hour, nobody had a clue what they were doing. It's as simple as that. They just went in there, they were doing something, and they would knock on the door, they would come out and say, I've done the work. And during that half an hour, nobody knows what's happened. So that is just a very simple problem that we were able to resolve by using digitization, making the information accessible, using augmented reality so the information can be provided to different stakeholders and ensure that before a problem arrives, actions can be taken. And I think for us, this is one of the ways of trying to educate the SMEs to move forward quickly.
Thank you. Rafika?
I'm going to talk as a big company because, like Suez, you know, is one of the leaders of environmental services, waste collection and water distribution. We have both sides. We have our clients, our customers, who are the public sectors, SMEs, people who need to get their waste and water done. And we have partners who are doing with us stuff to propose the best services to our clients. And on both sides, I think Suez as a big company has a big role to acculturate on this AI and data, because we can show what we were able to do within Suez and exemplify that it's easy for them also, it's pragmatic. Sometimes AI projects are very not costly, very pragmatic. With 50,000 euros you can bring something sometimes, but showing that we can do stuff easily, pragmatically, with the concrete use cases is the best way that our clients will take this AI innovation and make it happen in their processes. And the other side, for our partners, you have two kinds of partners. The historical ones who are not good in digital, and by asking them being digital as the way we are pushing them, trying things and taking the risk. Because taking the risk for SME also, it's a very known thing. They know how to take risks, but not in the areas they don't know and they don't master. So we need to help them taking the risks by perhaps investing with them, giving them some expertises from our companies, giving them some data as well, saying, hey, let's go and do it together. And you have other SMEs which are more AI-driven. I know it's not the subject of today, but I think as a company, we are working on a lot of this kind of companies. They have good ideas, they have good experts, but they don't know how to handle big companies' processes. So by working with them, allowing them working with our businesses, we are able to show what is possible, what is not possible, and we can bring them the expertise they needed to make their use cases and business AI business happening. So I think as a big company, I'm taking the other question, sorry, Françoise, but it's linked. But as a big company, we have a big role to do in the acculturation by testing and learning with them, giving them the opportunity to work with concrete people and implement within concrete processes. Because we can take the risk in AI as a big company, and I know that the SME needs to take less risk on this, but by sharing the budget, sharing the expertise, we are downloading, lowering their risk taking.
An example from you, Didier?
Yeah, and I will take an example that is something that happened with a client of business and decision in the cosmetic area. And in fact, what happened is that, as you know, with Medium, it was a medium company, sometimes the trades, people that are really driving the business are very, very busy, and it's very difficult to get time with them. And the CIO of the company, it was a computer manager, computer officer, wanted to do a use case with us, but he was not comfortable in explaining that to the trade. He wanted us to analyze the data because he had access to the data, and he wanted us to do it under the radar, so that the trade was not informed about that, and then he would have been able to show to the trade the result at the end. And we tried to discourage him to do that, because we know that it is very important to work with the trades in AI, because they know their business. We have our data scientists and our data engineer must understand the customer's business and the customer pains as well, and the data issues also that we found in every business. But he said, no worry, I take it on me, I give you the budget, you do the work, and don't be worried with the trades. So we started the project, and it was very odd, because of course our data scientist was having plenty of questions on what is this data useful for, what does this variable mean, what is this feature, how can we use it, and at some times one of our data scientists in our teams was so anxious that he went to see the trade and asked the question, but the trade was not informed about the project. So this goes up to the general director of the company that was not informed about the project, and we was then asked by the general director to, in a big meeting where all the trades were in front of us, and the CIO had very timidly to explain, yes, it's me, I asked business and decision to do that. Fortunately enough, one of the people of the trade was someone as I was knowing very well. So I prepared the meeting with him, and we saved the budget, we saved the project, and we was able to do the project. The project was optimization of the marketing campaigns, and after the project was done, we have multiplied the conversion rate by 1.5, thanks to the AI system. It was a recommendation engine. But I think I have never been so close for a stop in an AI project due to that. So it's a good lesson, I think.
And for very good reason, you never do AI without the business people, right?
Absolutely.
That's absolutely critical.
We learned the lesson.
Yeah. Roger, what do you say?
So I'm thinking on a case of one client of us that's basically a manufacturer of sport fashion goods, like sport fashion shirts and shorts for various sports and even teams. And basically, as a manufacturer of this kind of product, they need to forecast what's going to be the demand in a very long period of time, because they need to manufacture the products in advance overseas. And they basically wanted to create an algorithm in order to forecast this demand in long term and then assist the purchasing people taking better decisions and not having stock problems. And basically, we entered to do that project, and since the very first day, we realized that the main problem that they had is that they were doing all these forecasts manually with Excel, because the ERP they had could not provide them with realistic projections. It basically was projecting the data model by model, SKU by SKU, and it was not realistic, the results that they were getting. So they were dropping the ERP, doing everything by Excel, and of course, as the business was growing, it was not getting to any point. And in this case, although the intuition would say, okay, there's a lot to do, maybe there's too much to do in a first project. And in that sense, we needed to come with the direction, align with the business users, and go for a visualization project that was giving them data to the purchasing people to take better decisions. And this was a resounding success. Just this initial project was very, very simple and actually made a huge impact on them. And then we started with the forecast, but not with the forecast product by product, but trying to think in the forecast from the consumer perspective of what's the need of the consumer and not what's the offer of the company in order to cover that need. And with that, we managed to make a simpler forecast than the one that they were expecting us to do. That's actually proving to be more useful to them than something that they were trying to estimate that was not the right question to be asking. So in that sense, it's a good example of how maybe it's better to step a little bit back and go first of all for a visualization and maybe a simpler algorithm that's going to be more insightful than an impossible tool that you might be conceptualizing, but that it's not actually something that is going to be useful in the long term.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a very good one. Basically, AI should never be about the algorithm. You don't care about the algorithm. AI should always be about the business question you want to solve. And I'm going to take my position as an example here. I've been running for now a couple of years a program in France which is called PEC-AI, where basically we are funding a project, the first AI project of an SME. So we fund 50% of a project, not 100% of that. And Didier is part of this program with us. And typically what we do as pilot of a project is we talk with an SME. Usually we talk for 1 hour, not more. So I have this SME on the phone for 1 hour, and we talk about what they do. I never, ever talk about AI, of course. So they tell me what they do, how they do it, what are their problems, what is costing them money, what is not going right. And out of that, typically after 1 hour conversation, we end up with about 3-4 ideas of potential projects that can use AI. I know I can use AI, they don't, but they know what their problem is. So after that, I'm basically marry that SME with somebody who's going to realize the project for them. Could be business and decision, could be startups, and they have 3 months to produce a project which will bring them real value. The strange thing for me is that I've been talking maybe for the last couple of years with 50, 60 SMEs in all possible sectors. It can be a little insurance company. They're receiving claims, usually by email now with scanned documents. And one of their problems, for example, is to make sure that what we call card vital, the social security card, is correct, not a fake, and matches the details of a customer in their database. So basically they do that by hand or by eye typically, right? And checking the names and everything. What we did with this project was simple, automatize by vision, by automatic vision recognition system, the recognition and validation of this card. No big deal, save a lot of time. Another domain was like a company, they would sell a product for painting, for fixing a building, for fixing your bathroom, whatever. So all these products they have from various providers, and they received all these products with different names, different references, but always with a little picture or a document attached to that. Sometimes you have different providers selling the same product, different name, different reference. And they have to put that on their website, and then their customers come and order for that. So the question for them was, how can I automatize the acquisition of the different information on the different products so that everything, if it's different names and different references from the same product, it goes to only one product into my site. So natural language processing, ontology, cleaning up all that, and now they have something which is clean where people can find their product easily. So I have like 30 different cases like this, where every time in 3 months, you were talking about sales, but sites like they're basically, this morning I was with a site, they're selling carpets, right? Stupid carpet that they order from Turkey. When should they order their carpet, and how many of them should they order? So this is a project, not finished yet, where simply the company, the startup which is working with them, is going to optimize the number of carpets you're going to ask to produce from this Turkish producer. As many domains, I have never seen yet an area for SME where AI doesn't apply, unless AI is already there everywhere. And usually what's going to happen is that the company, this SME, is deploying their first AI product, not knowing that it's AI at the beginning and how it works, and at the end they say, I want AI everywhere. This is what we want them to go, right, basically. So we've covered a lot of ground here. To finish, maybe you started to touch on that, Shakira, Shafika, basically trying to figure out what can large groups do, or also what can the public sector do for SMEs. So now I let you decide who's going to talk next.
Yeah, perhaps to complete what I said before, I think big companies have a very big role to play on this. Because first of all, when we made some discussion before this meeting, we figure out that there is no different culture between big companies and small ones. They have all the fear, they have all the need of acculturation, they all need to have use cases and prioritize the use case. Perhaps the difference will be the risk taking. SME cannot take the risk every time. Big companies could take the risk many times and take the time to acculturate. So that's why I think big companies and SMEs are not so far. We can help each other, but the big companies could take the risk on their side by having the expertise, investing a budget. For example, our clients are public sectors, so we can bring them what other regions, for example, if you're working with Dijon, we can show what we've been able to make with Lille. If Dijon doesn't want to take some AI project for their collectivity, their people, if we show them what we've done with Dijon with OnConnect, they will say, okay, I can see the return on investment, I can take the risk to make it in my area as well, because I've seen that it's working elsewhere. So big companies have the role to have this 360-degree view of all the public sectors and our clients, and showcase every time that we are making things and investing on some technology in some area to show that the investment could be less for the new ones, and open the doors for this public sector to test more.
Who wants to talk about the role of the public sector?
About what, sorry?
The public sector.
For us, something that proves to be very interesting is that the public sector is actually facilitating, for instance, through Europe, through the Next Generation funds or institutions like the EIT Manufacturing, are helping create consortiums where can participate both corporates like big enterprises, SMEs, research and development centers, startups, in order to create one project that can be useful for the big corporate, for the SME, and that then can be commercialized to other companies in order to make it a viable and a live product. And this is something that I think that's very interesting. This idea of bringing SMEs with large corporates, with the startups, with R&D centers together in order to create one project that can be scalable and used in other areas, and is the kind of thing that the public sector is actually funding and that should keep funding, because are the projects that at the long term create more return for Europe, create more return for each of the company, and bring together these kinds of actors that otherwise would be very difficult for a large corporate to actually be doing a project with one SME.
Right, and this is also why we have lots of different countries here. Yes, please check it.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think it's very important to also explain that the access to the public funding or the funding has to be easy for the SME. So as an example, I can talk about in Portugal, there is an agency called SIFID, S-I-F-I-D-E. Essentially, their terms are very simple. Basically get 85% of your investment in first year as tax credit. They don't want to know what you do as long as it's certified by a number of companies they consider as being trustful companies. And that has been really important because SMEs don't understand all the different processes of getting the funding. So what I would just add to that, yes, public funding is important, but we have to reduce the barrier to access that public funding for SMEs.
Andreas, something on that?
Yeah, so we mainly work with larger companies, but there's one activity that's just starting. It's that these large companies have often suppliers that typically are SMEs. So in order to lower their cost of products, in order to increase the quality of the supplied parts, there is a collaboration now where these large companies select also some startups and help these smaller companies to really apply these technologies of the tech providers to be a more technically sophisticated supplier for them, because they realize we have to have a European supply chain. There are many disruptions now in the world, so it's absolutely necessary that we have here also not only the large OEMs, but also the suppliers that are able to manufacture at the quality that we actually wanted. And there's now quite some effort going into that collaboration of larger companies and smaller companies together with third-party tech application providers to really help digitize and advance these suppliers, the SMEs, to be technically mature.
Didier?
Yeah, so as you know, Françoise, we are part of the Orange Group, and also we have a member of the PACIA program. So we had the chance as a digital service company to do several projects with SME, and you participated to some of them, so you know that. So the first thing I want to say is that very often I have clients that ask me the question, what is the minimum size for a company to do an AI project? And what is the minimum number of employees that you need? And in fact, with Françoise, we have done some projects with very, very, very small companies. I think one of them was, maybe 10 people. And yes, you can go down to 2 people probably. So it's not a matter of size. It's obviously not a matter of size. Is it a matter of maturity, of digital maturity? Perhaps. Maybe it has some importance on that. Is it a matter of budget? Maybe, but you know, with the program that Françoise is managing in Île-de-France, half of the budget is paid by the government. So meaning that this is extremely good for companies that have a real motivation to go forward, to have half of the project paid. But you have to be aware that half of the project paid is not the full project paid. You know, you have still to pay half of the project. So it's still an important investment, but it's proven to work.
But they do it.
Yes, they do it. And you know, in this table, all my colleagues have given to you very good advices about what should be done and what should not be done. And all these advices, when you apply that to a project and you get a subvention from government, it turns the project from a project that is suddenly doable. So my best wish, I know that you are in the room, is that this project should be extended to France and not only Île-de-France, because I have so many clients in Nantes, in Toulouse, in Bordeaux, in Marseille, and in Lyon that are asking for that, and they are waiting for such a project to take place in other regions than Île-de-France.
Right. So this is basically what we wanted to tell you. Just do it. What's simple? Just start. You can take some question in the room if somebody wants to ask the question. In French will be fine, or in English as you like. Question? Everybody's shy?
Françoise, I wanted just to add something during people are asking. For SME, go ahead, because I said there is no difference between big companies and smalls. There is one. You can be agile. You can take decision and make it happen. In big companies, you need to convince like 100 people before doing projects. So really, it's a chance to be small. You are more agile, so take the risk and make it.
Just do it. So you don't want any question? Nope.
Maybe with a microphone it will be easier. Oh, nice.
Nope. Then we stop. Oh, yeah, one. Okay, go ahead.
I'll have a quick question. Thanks very much for the insights. Bonjour Gauthier, Didier, it's very interesting to listen to you. Regards to international, so SMEs work in France, but if they want to go international, does data and AI also cross the borders? I mean, if a French company wants to apply AI to international projects, is there a pragmatic way of starting small but starting now? That would be a quick question.
You want to know whether AI can apply to companies wanting to
I was saying, can a small project that you apply for a French SME quickly scale to cover all the sites that they might have internationally?
Very much depends on the project, right? The first project usually is very small, as I see them, because it has to be bringing success quick. Success meaning return on investment. In 3 months, you can do that. I don't think you can scale a project worldwide in 3 months. So first you start here, bring your success there, you get your money back, then you take that to deploy. And it can be done.
Okay, thanks. And as you were saying, I think you can showcase that success to other subsidiaries, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I could just add to what you said, Françoise, is that there are some additional challenges, particularly when you want to scale up. So one of the things we didn't talk about here is the infrastructure and the whole topic of cybersecurity. So I think as we scale up and as we build a journey with the customer, if that customer has an international business, because even SMEs export, that has to be implemented in the program, that ultimately we can also work with them in their international business.
Can I add something? In fact, also it depends on the nature of the project. Because, you know, if you have a project that consists in improving the yield of a plant, of a manufacturer, and then you have one manufacturer in, let's say, in France, and you have another manufacturer in Portugal, but it is the same, then the project, you can replicate it with nearly no cost. You know, it's done. But if you are in retail, that's a very different story. Once upon a time, I had a customer that asked us, oh, nice, I would like to do this project on a recommendation engine. Could we do it in Europe, for all European countries? We said no. You have to start with one country, you have to choose a brand, and you have to choose a country. Because consumer behavior in France are not the same than in Portugal and are not the same than in Spain. So it's three, if you want to do it in Spain, France and Portugal, I'm afraid it's 3 different projects because you have 3 different consumer behavior. So in retail, the answer is you have to choose one country. And then with the success of this country, it's a good example to do other projects in other countries. But in industry, it's different. If you have the same data, then you can replicate it in more easily.
More questions? Ben, thank you very much. And let's enjoy everything out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.